Let's continue testing NowItem component, and this lesson we're going to test the following scenarios. So the active NowItem has to have light gray color of the background, and inactive NowItem, once we're gonna hover over on this element, it should receive light gray background color. As always, let's duplicate one of the existing testing scenarios. Paste this scenario at the bottom and rename description. We are testing that the NowItem component has hover state, meaning that it should change background color if this NowItem corresponds to another page and not the one that is currently open. And before proceeding with test implementation, first of all, let's see how this logic is implemented inside NowItem component. So right here, we are using classes computed property, where it is determined whether current NowItem is going to have a hover state or not. And we're doing this by using this ternary expression. So in here, if the current NowItem will correspond to the current page, in this case, we're going to make background color of the NowItem gray. Otherwise, we're going to use a different class, which is basically going to add gray background on hover. And in order to test both of these cases, we somehow have to affect this expression, so that in one case it turns to true, and in another case it turns to false, in order to test both parts of this ternary expression. And just because current page is a reactive variable that gets imported from another module called rotor.ts, in our test we can basically assign any value to this reactive variable after we import this variable. So let's do that. I'm going to add an import of this reactive variable right here. And before mounting the component, let's do a little preparation where we're going to make timeline page active. And we can do so by simply assigning the name of the timeline page to current page reactive variable like so. Here we're using page name enumeration, which basically stores all pages in the application, and one of those pages is timeline page. And just because in our case we're passing timeline NowItem object into NowItem component, and this object corresponds to the timeline page, as we can see right here. So eventually the ternary expression that we have seen inside NowItem component is going to turn true, which means that the following class will be used, and that will make background color of the NowItem light gray. So let's check it out. First of all, let's just print out the list of all the classes of the A element. I'm going to find an A element and extract list of classes by using classes method. In the terminal, we're seeing the list of classes, and one of those classes is the class that we expect that makes background color of the NowItem light gray. So let's write an expectation where I'm going to check that among all those classes, we're not expecting to see the class which corresponds to the hover state, called hover:_bg gray 100. And that is why we have used not modifier in front of the toContain method, because hover class has not been applied since we are currently on the timeline page. But if after this I'm going to modify the value of the current page variable by assigning the name of the second page called activities, in this case that expression used inside the component is going to become false, which means that class that corresponds to the hover state will be applied to the A element. Let's test it out. I'm going to use the same expectation, but here, instead of negating this expectation, I'm going to check that hover class in this case will be actually present on the A element. And also let's print out the list of new classes. But as you can see, the test has failed and we are not seeing the hover class. So why did it happen? That is because Vue updates the DOM asynchronously, and it wasn't able to update the DOM faster than Vitest has finished test execution. So we have to wait until Vue fully updates the DOM, and only then continue with our expectations. For that, I'm going to make this function asynchronous, because we're going to use asynchronous operation inside. And to wait until Vue will update the DOM after we modify current page reactive variable, I'm going to call function flash promises with the wait keyword, because we have to wait until this operation finishes. And this time indeed we're seeing that our state class has been assigned just like we expect, and the test has passed. Now let's group all these lines in order to clearly separate 3 stages of the test: preparation, action, and expectations. By the way, we're using the hover state class twice in this test, so it might make sense to create separate variable to store this class in there. Here I will add the constant with the name hover class, which will store hover state class, and then reference this constant wherever needed. Let's also make sure that after modifying the ternary expression, we're going to get a test failure. And we are. So let's revert this change. Remove the modifier only from the test. And check execution of all tests. They are all passing, so we are ready to move on to the next lesson.